Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kindar, the Tiger Writes, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read the chapter of one of my stories and correct it as I go. Today we are doing the epilogue to Shattered Salvation. Catherine gasped and immediately tried to jerk out of Alex's grasp, except she was lying on the floor. When had that happened? She could hear the fighting, but it was now unbearably hot. She sat up. Where was Alex? She'd been defenseless. The knife had been coming. She touched the underside of her jaw and found kicked on blood. She placed a hand on her chest, and there was more blood as well as her shirt being cut right over her heart. She could almost remember a sense of pain there, but Alex hadn't stabbed her in the heart. The knife had gone in. She shook her head. Her memory was jumbled. That was all. She'd probably hit her head in the fall. She looked around. Chaos was all over, but fights on this scale usually were. She saw Bronda fighting someone in gray armor. Brad was fighting Kaylee, and men in gray were fighting each other. Had the universe gone mad? Why were they fighting each other when Tristan was still around? She stood, and something clattered to the ground. An arm. A cybernetic arm at her feet next to a Kataran carbine. What was an arm doing there? And why was it wearing her glove? To confirm it couldn't be hers, she raised her hand and looked at pink flesh. She moved the fingers, and they responded, while the metal hand on the floor was still. The world spun and someone bumped against her. She saw the fist coming and blocked it in reflexes, then punched as hard as she could. The head should have caved in under the force of the blow, but all that happened was that the man staggered back, his nose bloody, and pain exploded in her hand and then vanished. A nose bloody and pain exploding in her hand and then vanishing. What was going on? The man's nose straightened and it stopped bleeding. He snarled at her, but someone hit him over the head with a metal bar and he went down. The man who hit him turned and hit someone else, another until Friday stabbed him over and over. Even he didn't seem to notice her. His face was a rictus of rage and horror. That is enough, she yelled. No one reacted. She grabbed a carbine and shuddered at her cybernetic arm next to it. The polycarbon butt felt rough as she picked it up in her with her flesh hand. Picked it up. Yeah. Her new flesh hand. She fought another shudder and shouldered the carbine. She fired over people's head, but that too went unnoticed. She lowered it and looked at the fighting. What had gotten into them? Morrison stabbed Friday in the back and turned to cut the throat of one of Baran's men. Then he ran for one of her recruits, whose name she couldn't recall. She shot Morrison in the shoulder, then fired into the crowd. She only injured her people. Baran's men she put down permanently. After a dozen bodies, the fighting near her calmed enough that her people noticed her. Kopernik kicked her opponent in the balls, then joined Catherine. Others joined her, extricating themselves from fighting Baran's men. Some of them looked like they were about to explode, looking around frantically, eyes wide. One of Baran's men noticed the group and charged, screaming. She shot him in the head, and he went down. The rest were too busy fighting each other. What's going on? Where's Tristan? How many people did we lose? No one, as far as I can tell, Brad said. His clothing was bloody, cut, burned, but he looked to be uninjured. What do you mean, no one? In this free-for-all? He pointed to the man she'd just shot. The body twitched on the floor, the last of the neurons firing. Why did Brad look afraid? He didn't see as much fighting as the others, since he had trouble stepping outside ships, but he'd still seen enough not to be bothered by a dying. The man gasped and sat up. Her aim dropped in shock. He couldn't be alive. The hole in his head had been. The man looked around, and she saw the lack of a hole where she'd shot him. The burnt flesh was flaking off, revealing fresh pink flesh underneath. She looked at her hand and everyone around her, all of them showing sign they'd been hurt by the state of their clothing, but not their bodies. What's happening to all of us? Brad asked. I've been killed a few times already. I think it was insane. He'd hit his head and imagined that. No one came back from being dead. She looked at the man who was unsteadily getting to his feet. She placed a hand under her jaw. The knife had been coming. She thought she could remember it piercing her flesh, a sharp pain. She started shaking. No, she wasn't going to lose it. Her people depended on her. She looked at them, used anger to chase the fear away. And you just went nuts? She indicated around them. You decided to just see if you could actually kill each other? Brad looked away. I freaked out. He looked at her with an effort. Boss, this isn't natural. You're right, it isn't. She swallowed, but felt better. And what's done is done. She looked at her people. She looked her people in the eyes, one after the other. It's in the past. Understood? I don't want any grudges. We're better than that. Brunda looked at Camille and snarled, enough! Look at them. Is that who we are? We're professionals. We have a job to do. The first thing is to end this fighting. Arm yourselves and try to get them to listen to reason. Those who don't, kill them and tie them up before she couldn't stop the shudder. They come back to life. Our people got to work. She grabbed Kopernik as he... Kopernik is a woman, right? Kopernik, as she passed by, what's going on with this heat? The coercionist shrugged. No idea. It was like this when I woke up. Okay, forget the fighting. I need you to find out what's going on with the ship and get the damn life support system working properly. It feels like I've been baked. She ran. Sweat ran into her eyes, and Catherine rubbed it away. There was something wrong with her face. Panicked, she looked for a reflective surface and noticed this wasn't engineering. She dealt with that later. She picked up a polished case and looked at her slightly distorted reflection. It wasn't so distorted she didn't notice her face was symmetrical. She ran a hand over the smooth side, which, only moments before, had been covered with so many scars it couldn't move. She smiled, and it was perfect, natural looking. It was a perfect, natural looking smile instead of terrifying expression. She put the case down and put the carbine to her shoulder. Her joy at having her face back would have to wait until they had control of the situation. She scanned the room, a cargo hold, she guessed, and readied herself to provide support to her people. But they were handling the subduing of Sabaran's men in a systematic manner. In no time, a third of our men were dead, and the rest were lining up against the wall, having gotten the message. Life support's on the fritz, Kopernik told her. Air's fine, but the cooling barely works. Can you fix it? She shook her head. The problem is hardware, not programs. Yeah, there we go. She is a woman. But we have a more pressing one. I can't find the core processor anywhere. Is it dead? No, we wouldn't be breathing if it was. Someone, and I'm going to guess Alex, did an amazing job of hiding it. You can bet he still has access to it. Find that, and we find him. How could he do it? The easiest way is hardline connection. It's secure and can't be coerced away from him. So the bridge? Kopernik shrugged. I guess. I don't know where the processor is physically on the ship, but that's the most likely place. If not there, then engineering. Boss, Brad called from the other side of the hold. Definitely a hold, now that she took the time to look around. The shelving had been removed, but the movers were still on the ceiling. He motioned her over. There was a body at his feet. She thought it might be Alex, but then she saw the green tint to the skin. Oh, Armelin. He'd lost the fight. He'd lost his fight against Tristan. She crouched next to him. His head was gone. The flesh there had healed over the injuries, forming a dome of tight skin that pulsed slightly. She looked at Brad. He's still alive? If you can call this being alive. His body was warm. That could be the ambient heat, but she felt his heartbeat. His chest moved up and down. How was he getting air? How is it getting air? His head is in the corner. Should I get it? Maybe if we put it back, he'll... No. She couldn't keep the horror out of her voice. She swallowed and continued in a calmer tone. He died avenging Turon. We're not taking that away from him. She placed a hand over his chest and ignored the movement there. I hope the two of you are happy together in whatever afterlife you believe in. She bowed her head in respect. She'd never been religious. That had been Tom's thing. Her chest tightened. She missed him so much. And when she trusted herself not to break down, she stood. She faced her prisoners. They weren't happy, but they were behaving themselves. The ones tied up were waking up. All right, you lot listen up. I'm going to make this simple. I'm in charge. If you want, they don't answer to you, a tied-up man said. He shook his head as if to clear it. Really? And who do they answer to? Me. Even seated, he looked like he'd be tall on the lean side. She crouched before him. You don't look like you're in a position to give orders. Doesn't matter. I could be dead and they still wouldn't listen to you. Your death can be arranged. Good luck with that. She smiled at him and patted his cheek. Oh, I don't know. I have a good idea how to make it permanent. She rubbed the underside of her jaw. A couple of them, actually. The man didn't look concerned. Doesn't matter. You won't give them orders. All right, I'll bite. Why not? He smiled at her. The 58th don't take orders from a girl. She stared at him. Looked at the man along the wall. You're the 58th? She stood. You're the people who took down the sadist of Armsteldom? Are you fucking kidding me? Everyone talks about the 58 like they're some elite team hired only to pull off the jobs considered impossible. That's us. Really? What does that make my people? The 20 of us got 100 plus of you against the wall. Lucky. Nothing else. No. You guys are a bunch of posers riding someone else's reputation. The 58th wouldn't have fumbled this. It'd be me and my team against the wall, and we'd be negotiating a transfer of power like reasonable adults, not making boasts and threats. She stood and stepped back. You people have a choice to make. You can work with me, for me, or you can stay locked in here while we take control of the ship and leave. Go fuck yourself, girl, a large man said. The only thing that's going to happen is I take you to a bedroom and enjoy that fine body of yours. She looked him over. You think you can take me on? The man laughed, mocking her. She looked at Camille, who was a head shorter than Catherine and slimmer. Are you sure you wouldn't prefer taking her on? She looks more like you'd have a chance. She isn't the one I want to break. She looked at the tied man on the floor. He's typical for your group, I take it? Yeah, he's mean and knows what a girl's place is. She rolled her eyes. Okay then. Come on. Come show me my place. The man took a step forward. Boss? Bronda asked. Guns holstered. I'm handling him. Whatever you say, boss. Brad said. Anyone's got snacks? She motioned for him to approach, and the man ran at her with a scream. She rolled her eyes. Amateur. She punched him in the throat before he could close his arms on her, and cursed as pain ran up her arm. She'd already forgotten it was natural again. He got up faster than she'd expected. Right, injuries didn't stay. He came at her again, and this time she planted her elbow in his throat, sending him on his back, gargling. She reached for her knife, but it was gone. Right, Alex had taken it. Brad, a knife? He lobbed it at her. She caught it, turned, and planted it in the man's chest as he was about to close his arm on her. He fell back again, and this time didn't move. All right. I don't want to do this to anyone else, but I will if you give me a reason. I might be a girl, but I can kick your asses. You people are so fucking lucky you ran into me and not the actual 58th. From what I hear, they have no pity for anyone besmirching their good name. Now, I'm choosing to believe that you're not all a bunch of sexist idiots. If you're willing to work for me and get out of this oven, just come over to this side. Half the men walked over. What about those you tied up? I'll cut them loose, Carly said. She ended up with close to 70 of them. Last chance, she said to the others. You can have those deserters, girl. When the rest of us get out of here, we're going to make you regret ever crossing the 58th. I can't wait. We're moving out, people. Kopernik, any other way out of here? No, boss, it's a cargo hold, just one door. Then, once we're out, lock it. She was the last one out, and as the door closed, she could hear a commotion behind her. She sighed. Of course. Trouble was going to start now. She pushed her way through the people until she was at the front. Brad shot a man on the floor in the leg. Camilla another one in a hold against the wall. Carly was standing in front of another. They tried to run, Morrison said. Of course they did, she sighed. Just what part of work for me wasn't clear? Lady, the one on the floor said, still glaring at Brad. I'm not staying on this ship. There is something very wrong here. I'm getting in the first escape pod I find and getting out. No, you're not. She stepped over him, turned to face everyone, and raised her voice. No one is going anywhere until I'm done. Is that clear? If that's your plan, just turn around and get back in there with the others. I don't want to have to waste power on shooting you and locking you in a room. She looked at the three who'd already tried it. The one on the floor was glaring at her. Throw him back. He's going to be nothing but trouble. The other two went back in line. Carly, I need you to look at life support. Kopernik said there's a problem with the problem is hardware. I'm going to need help, boss. On a ship this size, whatever the problem is, it's going to be spread around. She looked over the group in gray. Any engineers, mechanics, dabblers? The men looked at one another. Brad was the one who spoke. I've had to patch up my ship a time or 30. Yeah, I've seen what comes of that, Carly replied. Good thing you have me around now, and just your help isn't going to help at all. It isn't about you, Brad. A ship this big needs teams of engineers for a reason. All right, Catherine said. I guess we'll just have to learn to deal with the heat for the time being. Last warning. If you intend on causing me problem, get back in the hold. No one moved. Good. You work with me and we'll be out of here that much faster. Kopernik, get control of as much of the system as you can and give me a status on the escape pod. Boss, we can't fit everyone on my ship. If we can't take control of this one, I need to know how many pods we have to work with. She didn't add that she needed to know if Tristan had used one to escape. She already knew the answer, but she had to keep hoping. The corridors were eerily silent as they headed for the bridge, and, as she expected, a handful of the men tried to run. They were shot and locked in passenger cabins. She split the group up to speed the search for Tristan and Alex. One of hers with a handful of the would-be 58th. Boss! One of the recruits she'd kept close by, along with Carly, Morrison, and Kopernik. Shouldn't we get out of here? I mean, like, right now? Not until we've dealt with Tristan. But boss, why would he even be here? Because we're still alive. The man looked at him and looked at him, at her, looked at her in confusion, which Kopernik shared. Tristan doesn't leave anyone alive. Whatever this is that's keeping us going, he's working on a way to deal with it. That means he's here somewhere. He had to be. If he'd used the opportunity to escape, she was going to be pissed. Johansson, right? The man nodded. If we leave without making sure Tristan's dead, we're as good as dead. He will hunt us down. It might take a while, but it doesn't matter where you hide. He's going to find you. Johansson chuckled nervously. You make him sound like he's some sort of super monsters. Catherine didn't smile. Come on, that's impossible. Somalians aren't anything special, just aliens. You haven't read the file we gave you, did you? Carly asked. I didn't see a point. I mean, you just needed me to shoot at him until he stopped moving, right? Carly snorted. If it was that easy, he'd never have become the problem he is. Someone would have ended him by now. When we're done here, I'll give you the chip and you can give yourself nightmares for a few months. Enough talking, Catherine said. I want us to take the bridge. Isn't that where you think Tristan is? Tristan asked, more nervous. Shouldn't there be more of us? Well, we'll get some of the teams back before we go in. We're going to have the comm system up by then, right? She asked Kopernik. Kopernik looked at her in a mix of defeat and exasperation. I'll have something working, boss, but you don't keep. I'll have something working, boss, if you don't keep adding to the list. I'm sure you'll manage it. The lift wasn't working, so they had to use ladders and conduits to go up. Those were even hotter, and they had to exit between levels to breathe. Brad caught up to them, 3 levels below the bridge. Catherine was down to her shirt and pants, and the only reason she didn't remove those was because she didn't want Baran's man to even think of it as an invitation. We have a problem, he said, panting and soaking in sweat. Enforcer's gone. What? It couldn't be. Our ship had enough security on it to keep anyone from leaving without our permission, programs and physical security. Exploded? She asked, considering one of them. Without getting a good look outside, I can't know. But that section's sealed for being exposed to vacuum. That means it's gone. I guess we'll have to use the escape pods too. She wasn't looking forward to that. How many did a ship like this have? It would be... I'm afraid not, Kopernik said. Now what? My program aren't registering any pods on the ship. That's impossible. It's a passenger cruisers. Pods have to be installed for them to be allowed to get out of the yard. I know, so it means they've been disabled. Then they can be fixed. Kopernik looked at Carly. Probably. I can't say until I've looked at them, but if those 58th find out, we're going to have trouble. We don't tell them. Let's focus on getting control of this ship. Hopefully that'll be enough. Catherine's hope died a little, but she reminded herself that she was still alive and that Tristan never, ever left anyone alive. She summoned all the hope she had left and got moving. They made it the rest of the way with only one rest. Catherine couldn't shake the feeling it was getting substantially hotter. When they made it to the top level, she gave Kopernik time to get the comm system working, and she called 5 teams back. While she waited, the temperature went up a few degrees. Now she knew she wasn't imagining it. It was getting close to the point where she'd get out of the remaining clothing and just shoot any of the men who thought they should do something about that. The door opened to an empty bridge. That Baran wasn't there didn't surprise her. The biochemist had said Tristan was after him. There was probably nothing left of the man. The biochemist was gone too. She'd almost forgotten about her, but now she knew she'd lied. She was probably hiding with Tristan and Alex. Maybe they'd known what was going on here and she was behind it. Could medicine do this? Bring the dead back to life? As she stepped onto the bridge, the last of the failing light showed her carnage added to what her people As she stepped onto the bridge, the last of the failing light showed her carnage added to what her people had caused when they'd first come. Every board was destroyed, ripped out, as far as she could tell. He's not here, she told Kopernik. I said it was a possibility. The most likely other place for the processor to be located is engineering. Later. You can still interface, right? She nodded to the data pad. Can you get the shielding up so we can look outside? Brad should be able to get an idea of where we are from the starfield, then see what's actually working in here, and then get me sensors. We need to get to a station. Carly got to work under the boards. Brad helped her, and the others stayed out of their way. Kopernik cursed as she worked. It's being stubborn, she replied to Catherine's unspoken question. I can't figure out why. Alex must have done something. A few minutes later, and she let out a yelp of joy, and the shielding slowly retracted, letting in intense light and heat. Before she could tell Kopernik to reverse it, she was blinded by light, then darkness. People screamed, and she felt her skin being burnt off. She blinked a few times, and to her relief, her sight returned. She also felt cool. She also felt cooler, or at least not like she was being roasted on a fire. There was more light on the bridge, which was good, she thought, until she noticed where it was coming from. Boss, Copernic said, remember how you said Tristan wouldn't leave the ship until he was sure we were all dead? Catherine didn't reply. What she was looking at was too overwhelming. They were so close to it, she could see the current of plasma under its surface. Copernic's voice was too calm, Catherine decided, as panic gripped her. She should be screaming along with the others. Catherine thought she'd start screaming soon herself. No wonder it was so hot on the ship. Do you think that's enough of a guarantee? Do you think there's any chance we'll survive? Catherine wrenched her gaze away from the sight to look at the young coercionist. She was looking back at Catherine with a pleading look. Catherine shook her head and went back to looking at the section of the star that filled the screen. No, there was no way any of them could survive this. And that concludes Shattered Salvation. If you have enjoyed this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next book's going to start, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read the other books in the series, they are available on all major e-retailer. If you want another way to support me, that's on my Patreon, where you can also get access to basically everything I've written. And if you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. The links are in the notes, and with that, I shall wish you a good day.